On tariffs, Trump just folded like one of his cheap ties, which is temporary good news for the entire world, including the part we Americans live in. Trump's fold on tariffs is complemented by RFK's fold on the measles vaccine. Also, good news for human beings who live in America. Ravi is finishing up his book tour, so he'll be back with us next week. I'll fly solo through the first half of today's podcast, and then we're bringing on Sam Ashworth to talk about his incredible debut novel, which I think says a lot about life in America right now. So I think you're going to be interested in it too. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join a majority. This is Majority 54. All right, let's start by talking about this tariff chaos. And I say chaos for two reasons. One, it is causing chaos economically throughout the world, but also because about 30 minutes, we're live streaming right now. It's Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Time. And about 30 minutes ago, the Trump administration announced that they are suspending all but these Chinese tariffs. I think they're still keeping in place like a 10% reciprocal tariff across the board. But they are pausing, I think, most of these tariffs for 90 days. And they are not saying why. They're keeping 125% tariff on China. Let's look at this video of this exchange that just happened about this announcement about them suspending these tariffs.
Excuse me, Raquel, if I could just add to what the secretary said. Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them. And that's exactly why more than 75 countries have called. Because the United States of America is the best place in the world to do business. And as the president has shown great courage, as the secretary has said, in choosing to retaliate against China even higher. Elena, go.
This is hilarious. I hadn't seen that yet. Okay, so their spin is that they put in place all of these absurd tariffs, right? And they're basically trying to make it harder to trade with the United States for everybody. And they're willing to tax Americans enormously in order to do that. And then they were like, wait, this isn't working. We have to stop pretty much all of it. And their spin is, you're missing the genius 3D chess that's being played. We didn't fold our cards. Everyone else at the table folded their cards. And their evidence for that is that when they put these terrifically harmful to the world's economic order tariffs in place, 75 countries called and were like, hey, should we talk about this? Never mind the fact that the president of the United States can probably get all 75 of those countries, or really any country he wants to, on the phone anytime he wants to talk about trade deals. So that is a typically bold spin. I will tell you, before we get into all this, what my goal is in talking to you about tariffs here. One, I'm going to give you the news, what was supposed to happen before the suspension, and also the internal divisions that are developing on the right that I think have a lot to do with forcing this announcement of the pause or the suspension of the tariffs. And also another theory that somebody else introduced to me about why it is that they may have been pulled today. And then at the end, as I typically try to do on this show, I'm going to lay out for you how I think you ought to talk about this with people in your life. So let's first start with the theory as to why they did this morning. And that is that if you look online, you will find quite a lot of chatter, particularly in economic circles and finance circles, about a real fear of people starting to sell off treasury bonds. Like people who, and this is like generally regarded, T-bonds are generally regarded to be about the safest investment in the world, right? You're not going to make a ton of money on them, but investing in US Treasury bonds is generally a really safe place to put your money and to get, a small, percentage increase return over time. And so when people sell them, particularly if they're preparing to sell them in large numbers, it portends the idea that investors around the world are like, the United States economy is about to collapse in a major way. And there's been a lot of chatter over the last 24 hours about people doing that, about people selling off their treasury bonds. And that may have been severe enough for people in the White House to say, hey, the entire US, we may be actually heading into depression territory. Maybe we should stop. That I think has an element of the timing, but I think the other part, which we'll get into in a minute, is just the consternation within within the Republican base, but also Republicans in the Senate, wealthy Republican donors, that kind of thing. But before we go there, let's look at what was actually planned to happen, what was supposed to happen. So last week, shortly after we recorded our episode on Wednesday, Trump took a break from his national security meetings with Laura Loomer, where he was firing national security officials in the White House, to announce tariffs on every country in the world. Let's look at that video.
Century later, in the face of unrelenting economic warfare, the United States can no longer continue with a policy of unilateral economic surrender. We cannot pay the deficits of Canada, Mexico, and so many other countries. We used to do it. We can't do it anymore. We take care of countries all over the world. We pay for their military. We pay for everything they have to pay. And then when you want to cut back a little bit, they get upset that you're not taking care of them any longer. But we have to take care of our people, and we're going to take care of our people first. And I'm sorry to say that. And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first.
Okay. Well, what he's doing there is he's conflating two concepts, right? He's saying that because we're putting tariffs on all these other countries, that's putting America first. And then what he's doing is when he says stuff like, we have to take care of the rest of the world all the time, we're having to pay for their militaries. What he's doing there is he's taking a real kernel of belief that exists for most Americans, which is this skepticism about our habit of being the world's policeman. The rightful consternation that most Americans still have about, the war of choice that we waged in Iraq, the choices that we made in Afghanistan, other, adventurous military activities that we've had over the last couple decades, ever since 9/11, basically, and even before. And he's conflating that with something that actually it has nothing to do with, which is our trade policy with other nations, right? So they don't have anything to do with each other, and that's important to remember. But let's also, by the way, when he says that they're putting tariffs on every country in the world, he didn't mention that he was not putting tariffs on longtime staunch American allies, Russia, Belarus, and North Korea. All right, so let's look at what they were going to do, or what has been paused. It's still technically in place. It's been put on pause. Here's a summary from Bloomberg last week. So U.S. imports were going to be subject to a 10% tariff, all of them effective April 5th. So that was in place. Trump would impose even higher rates on some nations the White House considered bad actors on trade. For example, Japan, who, I don't know, ever since basically after World War II, I feel like we've had pretty good relations with Japan. I mean, we had, what was, I don't know if it was a trade war, but a manufacturing battle, certainly in the 80s. But, we got a pretty good relationship there, but they were facing a 24% duty. The European Union, a 20% levy. China was going to be hit with a 34% tariff, which was adding to previous tariffs, like the 20% tariff that he imposed over fentanyl. So that would put the base tariff rate on Chinese imports at 54%. He's now saying he's going to, I think, 124% on China, because he's now positioning this as it's going to be the whole world against China. Okay. The tariffs are pegged to amounts that Trump says other countries imposed on the U.S. So here's the math behind the levies. Some global leaders are vowing to retaliate, while others are hopeful that there's still time to strike a deal with the U.S. Canada and Mexico are excluded from the reciprocal tariff regime. They're still subject to plans, or were still subject to plans, to impose 25% tariffs on most imports to the U.S. So all in all, this is the sort of thing that he is saying, you know what, we're gonna pull back on these, except the Chinese tariff, which again is above 100%. Above 100%, okay? So on Wednesday, this morning, China said it would increase tariffs on all U.S. imports to 84%, a response to the new U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports It also added 6 U.S. companies, including defense and aerospace-related firms Shield AI and Sierra Nevada, to a trade blacklist, and imposed export controls on a dozen American companies, including American manufacturers of photonics, of drones. The 104% tariff on all Chinese imports that Trump now has imposed in his second term will stack on top of earlier tariffs. So it comes up to, sorry, I was short by 1%, a nearly 125% tariff. Okay. Before we get into the big split on the right, I think this is an issue that is clearly penetrating. It's penetrating beyond politics, and people are starting to pay attention. And when people start to pay attention in modern American life beyond the political realm, because it's affecting their life, that's what tends to get the attention of people like Trump, because that's what he's always trying to do. And I will give you my personal anecdote about this, which is 2 nights ago, I was driving home with my son. It was like 10 p.m. on a school night, and we're coming from a baseball game that he had just played. And it was his 4th day in a row of playing baseball, and it had been unseasonably cold for April here in Kansas City. So he had been basically playing baseball in 30 and 40 degree weather for 4 straight days. He was exhausted. I was surprised that he was kind of half asleep basically on the way home. And a report comes on the radio about Trump's tariffs. Now, true, my son is 11 years old. He knows that his dad has been active in politics. Occasionally, we talk about politics around the house. He's met 3 presidents, so like but he's not like, I would not say he's an 11-year-old who's interested in politics or follows the news closely at all. He just doesn't. He's like a normal 11-year-old. And so he starts asking about what tariffs are. And I'm explaining to True about how tariffs work and what it means that Trump is trying to put these tariffs in place. And as I tend to do when I'm talking politics with True, I'm trying very hard not to expose my own biases. He knows what they are. He knows that, his mom and I are Democrats and that kind of thing. But I'm trying to just let him, form his own opinion. And True, who's half asleep, sits up and he's very upset. And he's like, wait, don't a lot of computer parts come from places like China? And I'm like, yeah, they do. Now, the other piece of context for you to know is a couple of months ago, True started his own little business, and it's an 11-year-old's business, but it's going well. And the reason he started it is because he wants his own computer, like for gaming and stuff like that. And what we told him was that, whatever money he made, we would pay half and he has to pay the other half. So he's been working really hard to make like a few $100s or more to do this. And he's like, so did the computer that I want to get just get like at least 25% or more like expensive? And I was like, yeah, it probably did. And he's like, what? He starts to get really upset. He's like, I've been working really hard to afford this thing. And so this has taken what is usually a very difficult to access topic like international trade. And what Trump has done is he's made it where even casual, very casual observers of American politics and of the news are starting to see, including my 11-year-old son, how these policies might negatively affect their life. And True was pissed. He was like, I wish I had done more to help Kamala Harris. And I'm going to be telling all my friends who also want to buy computers and stuff like that, that next time we have to make sure we get a Democratic president. So I thought that was really interesting. And it brings me to what the split that is happening in MAGA world over this. Elon Musk has sort of meekly pushed back against tariffs. Let's start with that video.
Well, I hope that I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are, there's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. And I'm hopeful, for example, with the tariffs, that at the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. And that would be that's what I hope occurs.
That is the most careful I have ever seen Elon Musk speak. This is the same guy who once said "F him" about his advertisers on Twitter or X. I mean, and he seemed like that is the most diplomatic I've ever seen Elon Musk. But what's important to note about that is that when you think about who's in charge of who, right, is that Elon Musk feels comfortable essentially parting. I mean, he's saying we want to eventually get to a zero tariff, parting with the administration and not worrying at all about Trump, being upset with him or retaliating against him or giving him less authority or anything like that. Now let's compare that. So when you ask like who works for who, Trump working for Musk or Musk working for Trump, let's compare that to his co-vice president, the other running mate of Trump, JD Vance, and how he approached this.
Explain to us how you get manufacturing here, but also get the cost down for the American people.
Well, if you go back a little bit, Lawrence, remember during the first Trump administration, everybody said that Trump's tariffs were going to be inflationary back then. What actually happened? We had 1.5% inflation. We had the fastest growing economy in a generation, and we had the beginning of a manufacturing renaissance in the United States of America. Then, of course, we had 4 terrible years of the Biden administration. But I think it's useful for all of us to step back and ask ourselves, what has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on 2 principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. That is not a recipe for economic prosperity. It's not a recipe for low prices, and it's not a recipe for good jobs in the United States of America. For 40 years, we have gone down that pathway. We've seen closing factories. We've seen rising inflation. We've seen the cost of housing so high that most Americans can't afford to buy a home right now. President Trump is taking this economy in a different direction. He ran on that, he promised it, and now he's delivering. And yes, this is a big change. I'm not going to shy away from it, but we needed a big change, Lawrence. We cannot keep going down the Joe Biden globalist pathway where we have $2 trillion of peacetime debt and deficits. We have manufacturing disappearing. That is not working for Americans. We've got to take this country in a different direction.
Okay, so JD Vance, as he usually does, did a great job of swallowing, memorizing, and regurgitating the talking points given to him by the White House. Now, since I just made you listen to Elon Musk and JD Vance, I will offer you a palate cleanser. And I think one of the better responses on this came from Derek Thompson from The Atlantic. Let's watch that.
To be totally honest, Kelly, I've been listening the last 10 minutes of this show. I cannot believe what I'm listening to. I heard your last guest say, if the economy shrinks, that's good. If the stock market goes down, that's good. If the housing market crashes, that's good. If there's a trade war, that's good. When did the capital class get taken over by degrowther protectionists seeking 19th century autarky?
Okay, but Derek, let me just jump in for a second, because if there's one refrain we've heard from millennials over the past several years, it's that the dream is gone. They can't afford a house. Groceries are too expensive.
It's only the first chapter of abundance.
It's apparently the first chapter of your book. So aren't you a little surprised to hear the globalists, the pro-stock market types who are supposed to be at fault for all of this, now reading out of your book and saying we're bringing prices back down?
They're crashing the economy. That's very, very different than making housing affordable. If you want affordable housing, you need a job. If you crash the economy, you're going to have unemployment. And whenever unemployment hits an economy, as we just saw in 2008 and we saw before in the 1990s, who loses their jobs first? It's last one in, first one out. It's young people. So if your job or if your plan is to crash the economy in the short term for the purpose of helping young people afford a house, you have got it totally backward. Young people need jobs, they need money, and then they need a plan to make housing affordable, right? Donald Trump could have come into office and said, what I want to do is to make the construction of housing affordable. That means the inputs to housing. Instead, he slaps a 25% tariff on Canada, which we import our lumber from, and a 25% tariff on Mexico that we get drywall gypsum from, thus immediately raising 2 of the most important inputs for housing by 25%.
All right. So that was like a palate cleanser for you, and I think a lot of great points that are made. Let's real quick. Let's go back to the baddies, and let's hear how Peter Navarro is talking about this for the Trump administration.
But my point here is is this, they're coming now and saying, we want to talk, we'll lower our tariffs to zero if you lower your tariffs. That's not the problem. Vietnam is a great example, Laura. They sell us $15 for every one we sell them. Zero tariffs would get us no reduction in the $123 billion deficit we have. And five of that $15 they sell us, you know what? It's China. It's that clip you showed about Cambodia, how China just comes over.
Thing, right?
It's the same kind of, we call it transshipping. It's just.
Okay, so he's just like, even if we got to zero, like if we get to the point where everybody's just freely selling to each other, it's still not okay, which is an interesting perspective. But let's find out one more thing about Peter Navarro. Jeremy, go ahead and play this other clip.
What amazes me this week is that all of these business people in the Wall Street community who are aghast with his trade policies are waking up saying, who the hell is this guy? In 2019, it was reported that in Peter Navarro's books, I believe in 5 or 6 of them, he continuously referred to an expert whose name was Ron Vara. Ron Vara was Peter Navarro's economic expert. Later on, the publisher had to put a caveat, that's a fictional person. Peter Navarro invented Ron Vara as an expert to back his economic theory. And suddenly, Wall Street Trump supporters are saying, oh my goodness, how could this guy have snuck into the White House? Are you kidding me? Is Donald Trump not the person who was once accused of making up his own PR guy named John Barron? So why is it that you're surprised that Donald Trump, whose number one priority is to choose people who are loyal, and a guy who went to prison for him, he would choose? And yes, we're laughing our heads off saying this guy invented a financial expert named Ron Vara. Well, Donald Trump invented John Barron. This is how we got here. Why is Wall Street, whose job it is to study businesses, intentions, and people, why are they suddenly shocked?
Personally, I like to think about Trump and Navarro sitting around in the White House, pretending to listen to John Vara come up with really stupid economic policies, and then turning to a fictional Barron and saying, can you go announce this to the press? I think that's kind of fun to think about, them sitting around with their imaginary friends. Okay, let's talk about where we are now, and then we'll talk about how you should talk about this. Okay. So as of this morning, so some of this needs to be updated now, but Trump wrote on Truth Social 3 minutes after the markets opened deep in the red, he wrote in all caps, be cool. And then in out of all caps, everything is going to work out well. Super reassuring. He said the USA will be bigger and better than ever before. And then a follow-up post, he insisted, this is a great time to buy. Like, methinks Trump was starting to get a little nervous this morning, right? Maybe I could just talk the market back into being good. So the market obviously was down again today, while shares of Trump media were up. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent then told bankers, we are in pretty good shape on the economy. Now, meanwhile, behind the scenes, what we now know is that they were scrambling to make an announcement to say, essentially, never mind, just kidding. So, and then earlier, JP Morgan chief Jamie Dimon has said the economy was likely headed for a recession. Trump's reciprocal tariffs on nearly 100 nations took effect, and it included those 104% tariffs on Chinese imports. And then on Wednesday, Beijing said that it was going to raise levies on U.S. imports to 84% from 34%. So basically now Trump is saying, never mind, we're just going to, instead of a world trade war, we're just attacking China. So also, as I mentioned earlier, under scrutiny was the sell-off in U.S. Treasuries. The yield on the 10-year note, the reference point for trillions of dollars in loans and securities, rose as high as 4.47% Wednesday before retreating somewhat. It marked the largest rise over a 4-day period since the height of, this is a key, the 2008 financial crisis. That's about what it takes to get the attention of the Trump administration or of Trump himself. Investors say there is broad nervousness about holding longer-term treasuries ahead of government auctions Wednesday and Thursday. That anxiety contributed to a global stock sell-off, with Japanese equities falling 3.9%. Now, John Thune he was trying to say, Republican John Thune in the Senate, that he was against tariffs, but he didn't want to buck the president who ran on it. Let's look at that video.
Leader Thune, with respect to tariffs, the White House has said that an additional 50% tariff will go on China if retaliatory tariffs by China are not taken down. This means that, according to some estimates, the tariffs could reach as high as 104%. What do you say to that, and what do you say to the markets in particular, which are very rattled by all of these tariffs?
Well, look, and I think you all covered this place long enough. I think everybody kind of knows my views on tariffs, but the fact of the matter is the president ran on this. There wasn't a campaign event where he didn't talk about the importance of getting other countries to treat us more fairly when it comes to trade, bilateral trade, multilateral trade in this country. And 77 million people voted for him and his agenda. And I think he deserves the opportunity to see what kind of deals he can get from some of our trading partners. And I think most of us are giving him the space in which to do that and hope that he is successful, because that's good for not only for him and his administration, but it's good for the country.
So that's a hostage video. He's like, this is really stupid. It's really bad. Me and the other two white guys standing behind me have been against this sort of economic policy really since we were conscious of any economic policy. But, you know, a lot of people voted for him, and I'm afraid of him, and I'm the majority leader here. So I guess I will just say a lot of people voted for him, and I'll say it in 5 different ways to avoid answering the question with what I actually think about this absolutely insane economic policy that is got the United States careening toward economic collapse. Now, we like to bring you other elected voices from the right or from the cultural right on the show to kind of check in with them occasionally to see where the cracks are in that system. And we, I think maybe each of the last several shows have found gone to see what Dave Portnoy from Barstool has been saying about this. So let's look at his tweet here. So Portnoy, he tweeted, so he is quote tweeting, for those who aren't watching but are listening, a report that says U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent is saying that Wall Street has grown wealthier for 4 decades, and for the next 4 years, it's Main Street's turn. So then this is quote tweeted by Dave Portnoy, who said, isn't Bessent worth like hundreds of millions of dollars because of his work on Wall Street hedge funds and shit? Now that he's left Wall Street after making infinity money, he is saying the stock market is bad. When did he work on Main Street? I mean, it's there's some, this, you know, oftentimes we could be accused of having wishful thinking about there being divisions on the right about things when often they are not as pronounced as we want them to be. I don't think that's the case here. I think there are real divisions on this because this is hitting people like Portnoy right in the pocketbook. And that is what folks on the right, and let's be honest, most Americans, when they vote, that's what they seem to care about the most. And so it's causing a lot of consternation. Now, this brings us to how you should talk about this. I think this is really important because this is a moment that we can seize to really bring a lot of people to our side, not just on this issue. There is, I actually saw, I want to credit, I saw this cartoon on Instagram by a user I don't know anything about. It was sent to me. The user is @XKCD, and he draws cartoons. And he had this cartoon that I'm not going to describe the cartoon to you. I'm just going to borrow the analogy from it, and you can use this when you're talking to people about the issue of tariffs, particularly across the board tariffs, the way Trump has put them in. And in this, I'll just do it this way. Imagine say this to somebody. Say, hey, do you have one place that you tend to get pizza delivered from? And most people do, right? They got a favorite pizza place in their area. And then ask them, say, has that pizza place ever bought anything from you? Like you spend probably an average of $20 every time you order pizza from them. Have they bought anything from you? And maybe the person you're dealing with is like, and it doesn't matter what they do. Maybe they're a dentist or whatever. They sell insurance. You know, have they bought any insurance from you? Have they scheduled a dental appointment with you? And the answer most likely is going to be no. And you say, well, then why are you at all buying anything from them? And they'll say, well, because I like getting pizza from them. I like their pizza. And then you say, no, we're not doing it that way anymore. From now on, if you're going to buy pizza from them, and if they want to deliver pizza from you, here's what has to happen. Before they enter your driveway to deliver pizza and bring it to your door, they have to Venmo you an amount of money that is equal to the amount of money that you paid them for the pizza. And the person you're talking to is going to be like, well, why? Why would they do that? And it's because you're getting ripped off. You keep sending them $20 every few weeks. And what have they given you? And the answer the person will probably give you is pizza. And you say, well, nope, that's not the way it works anymore. Trump's economic policy is the equivalent of you saying, I will continue to order pizza from you, but I will not allow you to actually bring me the pizza. unless you send me my $20 back. What would happen if you actually did that? Your pizza would cost $40. It's the only way they're going to make the $20 they're supposed to make. And that's why this Trump economic policy is so incredibly stupid. Now, people will say, as his press secretary tried to say in that clip I played for you a few minutes ago, no. That may be stupid, but it was so crazy it worked because now all these countries are coming to us and now we've got everybody lining up against China. No, that is not what's happening. Here's the analogy you should use. Some people, when they play poker, are particularly good at bluffing. They are. But in order to be good at bluffing, you have to occasionally lay down your cards. You have to occasionally show them, and you have to occasionally hit an actual hand, right? This is the equivalent of sitting at a table playing poker, and it's a huge table. There's hundreds of people playing at the table, and every single hand you put more and more chips into the middle, and every single time you then say, never mind, and you fold. And at no point do you actually show your hand. At no point do you actually call anybody. At no point do you take a hand to the actual end of the hand, which means all you're doing is giving things away. And occasionally, if you do get called, you never have the cards. You bluff all the way to the end. That's what Trump is actually doing. And what that does is, even if you take the tariff policy out of this and you take, even if he were to suddenly go to zero tariffs and then back up to some tariffs, what you're creating is volatility. And nobody wants to play poker with somebody who sometimes they get up and go to the bathroom and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they stand up and take their shirt off and run around. Sometimes they bluff. Sometimes they fold. That creates volatility, and people don't want to do business with that person. And so as a result, it makes it very difficult for you to actually make money in that kind of a business relationship. You talk to any business person who's serious, and they will tell you that as much as they may not like new regulations on their business, what they dislike more than anything is those regulations constantly changing because they can't figure out how to do business in that market. And that's the biggest damage that Trump is doing by constantly saying there's going to be tariffs and then pulling them back and forth. So with that, we're going to take a break. Two things. One, we're going to talk to Sam Ashworth, who's got this incredible debut novel that you need to know about because it is culturally relevant to a lot of the things we talk about here. And then the other thing I'm going to tell you is there's a lot of new people listening to this right now, which is great. Please go and download this show also on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you tend to listen to audio stuff, because it helps the show and because it makes it easier to share it. It'll help you follow the show and get the show showing up in your feed more often. So please go and do that. If you would. But with that said, let's go ahead and take a break.
420 is around the corner, and there's no better time to elevate your wellness routine. Whether you want to relax, recharge, or refocus, VIA has the perfect lineup for you. And if you haven't tried them yet, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, refocus, or boost your mood, VIA is here to enhance your everyday and night. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, VIA is changing the game in natural wellness, blending powerful, high-quality hemp-derived ingredients to deliver real effect-driven benefits. Whether you're looking to sleep better, have better libido, improve focus, recover, or simply relax, VIA has a tailored solution just for you. With products ranging from 0 to high cannabinoid levels, VIA lets you fully customize your experience to fit your needs. Whether you're looking to support your daily wellness routine, enhance focus or clarity, or unwind with deep relaxation, VIA has you covered. From their award-winning effect-forward gummies to calming drops, every VIA product is thoughtfully crafted, made with organic, lab-tested hemp sourced from trusted, independent, American-owned farms. And the best part, VIA legally ships across the U.S. discreet, direct to your door, no medical card required, and backed by a worry-free guarantee. Not sure where to start? Take VIA's product finder quiz to get personalized recommendations tailored to meet your needs. It can take you less than 60 seconds to complete. So if you're 21 plus, treat yourself to VIA's annual Spring 420 sale, Black Friday level savings up to 35% statewide right now, or site-wide right now, up to 50% off packs and bundles, and get a free gift and more savings with your first order using our exclusive code MAJORITY at the link in our description. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. If you're 21 plus, check out the link to VIA in our description and treat yourself to VIA's annual Spring 420 sale, Black Friday level savings up to 35% site-wide right now. up to 50% off packs and bundles and get a free gift and more savings with their first order using our exclusive code MAJORITY. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. That's code MAJORITY at the link in our description. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about us. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with VIA. For men, dealing with ED can be uncomfortable, which is why HIMS provides access to a comfortable solution with an online process and personalized treatment options. HIMS is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable tablets, Viagra, and Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% less. And the process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. You just fill out an intake form on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/majority. The featured products include compounded products which are not approved nor verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for details, restrictions, and important safety information. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Okay. Now we're about to be joined by Samuel Ashworth. Sam is a professor of creative writing at George Washington University and a former columnist at The Rumpus. His fiction and nonfiction have appeared in The Atlantic, The Washington Post, Long Reads, Eater, and many others. A native New Yorker and bilingual French speaker, he now lives with his wife and 2 sons in Washington, D.C. He's here to talk about The Death and Life of August Sweeney, which is a new novel, his debut novel. It's about the rise and fall of a celebrity chef told through his autopsy at the hands of a woman he mysteriously handpicked for the job. It's not a murder mystery. August knows he's going to die, and he makes, in his usual careless way, a plan. So the autopsy involved is a clinical autopsy, the kind performed in hospitals on people who've died of natural causes. Maya Zhu, his character, is a pathologist, and the way the book works is that Maya and August's narratives are woven together. And his covers 50 years. Hers takes place all in one day. I thought our audience would dig the book because it's also to some extent about the experience of a woman who is a professional in America with immigrant parents, a celebrity who experiences cancellation, and what it means to the world of healthcare policy that we don't do anywhere near as many clinical autopsies as we once did. So, Sam, welcome. How you doing?
It's really fun to be here.
Yeah, this is cool. All right, so you fully immersed in 2 worlds in order to write this book. So talk about the process of immersing in each.
So to write this book, I had to go a little gonzo. I sort of tend to approach writing the way actors do when they start preparing for roles. Like they get to learn how to play the piano in 6 weeks or bullfight or sew a dress. And so what I had to do was I spent 2 weeks working in an autopsy lab at a hospital in Pittsburgh. And by working, I mean, they let me do everything except handle sharp objects, which was explicitly for my protection, not anyone else's. And that just meant that I would come in every day, and if there was a body, there was a body. And I understood what an autopsy really involves, how it works, what the science is, what the techniques are. And for the food side of it, I had worked in the service industry since I was about 16 years old, but I'd never worked in a professional kitchen. I was always a bartender or a server. And so I got a grant from my graduate school at the time to go and travel to France. And I went and I became what's called a stagiaire, or like a short-term, basically an intern, really, in a kitchen. And it had a Michelin star. And I got a clearer understanding of what it meant to be a prep cook, really the lowest of the low. I was several rungs below the dishwasher because the dishwasher needed actual expertise. I was mostly a pair of hands to do things like pluck cilantro off their stems for 3 hours or clean squid or debone salmon. And after a week or so of that, I was ready to go back to the dead bodies.
Okay, so speaking of the food part of this, so the main character in the book is a very tall, obese man with enormous excesses who happens to be a celebrity chef. Uh, what made you go like, you know what I want to write about? And like, how did you dream up that character? Like, where did it come from?
The original idea for the book came from me sitting at a bar one day with a colleague, and out of my mouth come the words, what if you could tell a person's life story by dissecting their body? Like, what if you could learn to read the story of a person's life as if it were written on their body? And the stories of our lives are written on our bodies. We just don't really know how to look. And once it was sort of a joke, but once it came out of my mouth, the whole book just sort of assembled itself. And I spent time in gross anatomy labs, that's the first class in medical school. The first class everyone takes in medical school is gross anatomy, where everyone gets a cadaver. They work in groups. And there'll be about 40 of them in the room, all preserved and covered up. And you work steadily through it over the course of a semester. That's how you learn as a first-year med student. And eventually, the question became, well, who's the body on the table? And the first time I went into an anatomy lab, a friend let me in with her late one night. I got wildly hungry. I got really, like, almost disturbingly hungry. And then I found out this is a really common thing for anatomy labs. I know it's gross, but it's real. And why that happens, who knows? But for me, it was clear that there was some sort of elemental connection between food and the body, and it quickly came together that this guy had to be a cook. The person at the table had to be someone who worked with food. And then I needed to make him the most interesting body I possibly could. So I made him immense.
Okay, so what I said a minute ago when I was introducing this, and what I believe is that the book, there are, if not political, at least cultural aspects of it that I think are informative, and there are takes, there are things that it's saying about life in America, about life in this moment. And Ravi and I have a thing on this show where we like to talk about things that are political, even though they don't seem political. And so one of those things that I think is interesting in this book is this aspect of American life that I know you find fascinating and that you examine in the book, but you have no interest in participating in yourself, and that is the experience of fame. And specifically, I think uniquely American fame. So what is it about fame and its intersection with culture that fascinates you, and what did you want to say about it in this book? Because, by the way, I think it's relevant because, like, we have a person who's president right now because they became famous on television. So
yeah, and I am endlessly fascinated by the experience of fame. And you're right. For me, the idea of being face famous is frightening because, and you've said this, that when you live in that world, you know that every time someone has an interaction with you, that's going to be their story of you going forward. It may be a very minor interaction to you, but for that person, it's going to stay with them, and they're going to carry it, and they're going to tell people about it. And so you have to be the guardian of other people's experience of you all the time. And I suspect that there are people who wind up in that situation who are very uncomfortable with that, and they kind of unspool, or they kind of they get very jaded about it. They get almost contemptuous about it, right? And that, I think, results in a lot of the lousy interactions you often hear about that people have with celebrities. But then there are the people who thrive on it, who need it, for whom their ego starts to depend on it. And if they can't be recognized, if they can't have that external validation that says you matter, right? Because it's a drug. And it's a fascinating drug. And so it is something that attracts me and scares me. but I wanted to write about someone for whom it is, it's the air he breathes. And he doesn't start that way. There's a lot of the story is about how he becomes famous, how he sort of hits this wave. A lot of the book has to do with the early days of the Food Network, and he sort of falls ass backward into it, right? As he does into most things in his life.
Which is a fun part of the book. Okay, the book is also in some ways a love letter to excess rather than an indictment of it. And I don't really know what my question is here, other than that feels like an oddly patriotic point of view from an American writer. And I wonder if that makes sense to you, and like what drove you to write about excess in the way you did, because you didn't write about excess, which I think is uniquely American, in a way that's like that shames it or puts it as something to be embarrassed. In a lot of ways, the book almost celebrates the excess with which this guy lived his life.
Like, you know what's wonderful is that I've done a lot of interviews for this. No one's ever asked me that question.
No, I'm a genius.
I love it. I do love it, because I think that there is something. I think you're right. I think there is something very American about how we want as a country, how we hunger, and how we also believe that we are entitled to get what we want. That's the American credo, really, right? Mm-hmm. We do not believe in self-sacrifice. We believe in getting what is mine. And so much of what we struggle with as a country comes from that, but also so much of what makes us extraordinary and revolutionary comes from that always wanting more. There was this character. There's a Saul Bellow book called Henderson the Rain King, long time ago, and there's this character, and he's a sort of larger than life figure, and he has this constant refrain that he says, I want, and he doesn't. What he wants is irrelevant. He just wants it, right? He wants more, and that's what August does. But also, that's what the doctor does as well. Maya Ju, she is August's polar opposite in a lot of ways, but she has those same appetites, that same selfishness, but she channels it entirely into her job, right? Mm-hmm. She cuts off everything else in her life because she knows exactly the one thing that she wants, and she is going to get it. So I do think that, as to the extent that this is an American book, and it's a really American book, because it's about getting famous in America. It's about succeeding in America.
And about food. And like the excess part is just the idea that, like, how dare anyone deny me anything, including myself? Like, how would I impose limits upon myself?
Have you seen our portion sizes?
Right.
We want to be given more on a plate than we can possibly consume.
And then we will consume it all.
And then we will do our best to consume it all.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I would say the other thing about it is that it's also, I don't know how appealing this part is to listeners, but it's also very much a New York book, because I'm from there, and it's very much about what makes New York, what makes a city, and it charts 50 years in the development of New York City. And I think that ambition that they show, that they both live with, is a huge part of what animates New Yorkers in their core.
Okay, so last thing, which is not about the book, and this is more just for the OG listeners of this show who have gotten to know Ravi and I very well over the years. You helped me write my most recent book, and you and I have been writing a yet to be announced project together on and off for the past 18 months, and you're currently writing a book with Ravi. So since this audience has gotten to know the two of us pretty well over the years, what is the difference in working with the two of us? And feel free to be more tough on Ravi, since he's not here to defend himself.
No problem. What is the difference in working between the two?
Yeah, like the distinction. Like, what's like, how is it different, or is it the same?
Oh, you are trying to get me into trouble.
Well, you're free to say nice things too.
What the biggest difference isn't actually in character disposition, although there is a significant difference. It's in the projects that we've been working on. You and I have been doing stuff that's much more narrative, where you and I have been telling stories together. We've gotten really good.
So you are going to totally dodge this question. I get it. Continue.
Look, I learned it from you.
Okay.
Where do you think I learned?
That's
dodge
fine.
a question. I've been watching you. How can I do this?
All right, let me ask this.
This is live
Who
too.
who is more likely to let's see, to send you a request for something at an inopportune time?
Robbie.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, basically, you and I have kids, and he doesn't, and I was going to take advantage of that.
He's the most childless man on God's green earth. Hi, Robbie. You're not listening to this.
I got what I needed. Okay, where can people find you, and where can they find the book?
They can order it on Amazon or bookshop.org. They can go to they can order it from their local library, which is something I really, really want people to do. I'll show you the cover again. It's real pretty. It's hard to miss.
It's called The Death and Life of August Sweeney by Samuel Ashworth.
And I especially want people who are in the medical worlds and the food worlds to dive into it. It's gotten a lot of really positive reception. Tom Colicchio blurbed the book, and we're doing an event later about it. But the best place to find me and contact me is via my website, samuelashworth.com. And I'm also on Instagram at samuel.b.ashworth and on Blue Sky at Samuel Ashworth. I technically have a Twitter X presence, but why?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, the book is The Death and Life of August Sweeney. It is Sam's debut novel. It is fantastic. It is about more than just food and death. It's about, life in America at this moment. And it is getting rave reviews. Everybody loves it, including me. So go out and buy it. Sam, thanks for hanging out.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. Okay. One more thing to promote. In addition to, I will still, since Ravi's finishing his book tour, you can still go to garbagetownbook.com and get Ravi's book as well, which is also doing extremely well and is also an excellent book. Ravi and I are also doing this show on Valor Media Network called The Game Within with our friend Adisu Demisi, and it is about the politics of sports and the business of sports, and it's sort of how sports and politics interact. And it's really fun. We're really enjoying doing it. It currently streams live on Tuesdays at 1:00 Central, and then it drops on audio on Tuesday evenings. So please, in addition to this show, go and follow The Game Within, find it on your feeds, and review it as well, and review this one. So thanks you all so much for listening. This, you will not, starting next week, have to continue to put up with me doing the solo act here. We'll be back to it'll be myself and Ravi, and you can always find me at Jason Kander everywhere. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.